If the Browns win the coin toss on Sunday, they need to take the ball. I'll explain coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. The Browns need to get a lead on Sunday against the Packers if they want to have a chance to win. Also, Cleveland needs more from Cedric Tillman on the offensive side of the football and how I think Sunday will play out between the Browns and Packers. I do want to thank you for being on every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I know that it's going to be tempting for Kevin Stefanski, if the Browns win the coin toss on Sunday, to put his defense out on the field and try to set the tone for the game by putting your best unit out there and trying to stop Jordan Love and this Packers offense immediately and see what you can sort of do with that. And I get it. Like, the defense sets the tone for this team just in general, so why not? But if the Browns win the toss on Sunday, they need to put the offense on the field and they need to try to go get themselves a lead. Because here's the other thing. The Browns offense, the defense can certainly set a tone, but if the Browns offense can go out and deliver a scoring drive to open up the game, I think it sets a different tone for this team. It would be only the second time this season that they would play with a bit of a lead, if you will, because the only other time they had a lead was when they jumped out in front of the Bengals 16-14 after scoring the touchdown they did in that game. And we know how that ended. They missed the field goal. They missed the PAT, so it was 16 instead of 17. Which would have then tied the game when the Bengals eventually went down and kicked the field goal. And so the Browns would have ended up winning that game had they just made their kicks. But it was the only time, it was a short stretch of time that the Browns actually had a lead in the game. This is different, though. This is getting the ball, attacking down the field, going and scoring a touchdown, ideally, to take a lead in the game and then put your defense on the field with a chance to protect that lead. And we know from what history has shown with Kevin Stefanski and the offense that Kevin Stefanski has generally done a good job with the scripted drives. And it's something that's been a staple, a calling card to his offense over the years, is that generally those first drives of games tend to go pretty well for them. And a lot of times they end those in points. So putting that unit out there with a chance to go down and score, potentially give yourself an early lead, I think really would set an important tone for that game and how Sunday could potentially play out moving forward from there. I understand too, like, then the Packers have to come back out and they have a scripted drive of their own to go through. But I just think that you have a Packers team, or you have a Browns team, that if they finally have a lead and you give this defense a lead to defend, I think it sort of changes the landscape of the game a little bit. Knowing that it's hard for this offense to really get things going, they don't want to be playing from behind. I know that week one, they started the game from behind and they found a way to go down the field and score, but I think it increases the intensity of that defense in the first series if they go out there. If you get a touchdown on the board, they understand, like, hey, we got to go out and have like a shutdown inning here, if you will, to use a baseball reference. And try to keep their offense from equalizing or going down and getting points to shorten the lead or whatever it might be. So I'd be curious to see if they can pull that off. Obviously, it takes winning the coin toss first, which the Packers get the courtesy of having a chance to choose. But if the Browns come out with having won the coin toss, I think that the path to take here for them is putting the offense on the field and trying to go down the field and score and give yourself a lead for the first time since late in that, in the third quarter of that first game of the season. You give yourself a chance to sort of defend that lead. And given how good your defense is, I think it sets the right tone and sends the right message. I also think, too, maybe it even gets your offense, off to a good start where then they can build upon that the next time they're on the field and start a little hotter than they have in previous years, and sort of making that work. But we'll again, it's a we'll have to see thing. This offense isn't very. We know how this offense is, and we know that they have their deficiencies. But I wonder, like, the type of momentum you could build from simply getting the ball first and then going out and scoring and giving yourself a chance to have the lead. I mean, also, here's the other thing. If obviously the other way that this plays out is just that the Packers win the toss and they defer, and then your offense goes on the field anyway. But my larger point in this conversation was simply for a more bold sort of statement here of, let them have the ball or take the ball first if you win the toss. Sure, if they lose the toss and they still get to put their offense in the field because the Packers defer, that's a fine route too. I just think I like the idea in this matchup of the Browns offense taking the field first and having a chance to give yourself a lead, play with a lead, set that defense up to actually be in a situation where they're sort of set up for success. And they're not playing from behind because they're so good. They could certainly limit the damage on it. This is another game as we go into it that I could see them limiting the damage from the Packers and keeping it interesting and keeping it close. And if you start this game off with a touchdown drive, great. You're already sort of ahead of the curve there a little bit in terms of what the offense has been able to do. And it takes some stress off the defense, I think, that they don't have to it feels like they'll already they'll be playing with a lead. So the pressure, yes, there's still pressure to defend that. But I also think there's not the pressure of, hey, we got to keep us in this game, keep the team in the game for, 3+ quarters and give them a chance to sort of get something going. They already will have had something going. It's a different sort of pressure. And I like the thought process there. I also think, like I was saying, the momentum on offense maybe gets going a little bit quicker. And maybe it allows you to set the tone for the drives that follow. If they can get that run game working early on in this game, if Joe Flacco can get into rhythm early on in this game, if you can find something that you exploit with the Packers defense early on in this game. Yes, there's always adjustments, there's things that are done, but I think I think that's the best possible way to start a game for this Browns team is to get the ball first, go down and score, ideally a touchdown, but even a field goal get you on the board and give yourself a lead early in a game, which is something that they haven't been able to play with yet. And then okay, our great defense goes out there with a chance to sort of slow this thing down and see if they can stop this opposing team. And maybe we have a lead for a little longer. Maybe it gets the offense moving in the right direction and sets the tone for the game in general. I think it's massively important that's how this game sort of starts. You don't want to have the Packers get the ball first and then go down and get a lead or whatever it might be and have to, respond in that way. Because we know this team's not built for shootouts. They're not really built to come from behind. And so I just think you send the right message if you're Kevin Stefanski. If the Browns happen to win the toss and you take the ball first, or frankly, if you get the ball first just because the Packers win the toss, and you go down and you get a chance to score there, that's the right message I think this team needs to send for an 0-2 start to the season and to avoid setting the wrong tone for a week 3 matchup that many people believe is going to set the Browns up to be 0-3 to start this season. You want to start hot, you want to start fast, and I think that outcome with the coin toss and getting the ball and going down and scoring starts the game in the right direction, if you will. Speaking of the offense, I've talked a lot this week about the run game being pivotal to winning against the Packers on Sunday. I also think, though, what we've seen so far from Cedric Tillman has been somewhat disappointing. There's been some good moments, but also some just okay moments. And I think the Browns need more from the number 2 wide receiver. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Browns, I'm looking at rookie defensive tackle Mason Graham, who delivered in a big way in week 2. He finished with 5 combined tackles, including 1 for a loss. He was constantly blowing up the Ravens' run game before it really got going. as him and the defensive line and the front seven in general limited Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to just 36 yards rushing last week. And despite the losing effort, Graham came through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you're watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Mason Graham is on a streak. And just like Mason Graham delivered for the Browns, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season. You could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following an NFL season with FanDuel, and frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person and you want to bet on a player eclipsing a certain benchmark in a game, or maybe you want to combine that benchmark with a few other props, and maybe even a money line thrown in as well to build a same game parlay. You can just jump on the money line in real time as well as the action unfolds, whether it's for your team or against your team. And that's why FanDuel is great, because the options are endless, and it makes every game, whether it's your team playing or not, even more exciting. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So I think Cedric Tillman has had some moments this year where he has looked like he was living up to the hype that the Browns sort of put on him. That first game was obviously a tremendous start for him, despite the one ball that deflects off his hands and gets intercepted. You know, Jerry Jeudy talked after that game about the idea that that's such a fluke thing that could happen in a game. It's rare that you actually see that type of play happen that way, right? Where 2 times in a game, a ball deflects it just enough for a defensive back to lunge out and make the catch and pull in an interception. Like it was pretty wild that it played out that way without question. And so understanding that, I still think though, like that was part of a bigger thing for Cedric Tillman, where it's like he didn't catch the ball. And that's something that I think is still a bit of a work in progress for this Browns team in terms of like the drops this year have been an issue. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy has 3 of them this season. There's been some others. I know Cedric Tillman has at least that one, and he did catch the touchdown this past week as well. He's got the 2 touchdowns, which is great. But we know that should have been a ball that was intercepted as well. It was kind of a fluky thing. And I just think, like, as we talk about this receiving room and we talk about the lack of separation when you go back and watch the tape from these first 2 games, Cedric has to be somebody who can create more for himself and find ways to get open. And I just don't know if he has that in him right now. I think it is still the biggest question that has to be answered with this receiving core, is whether or not he can be that number 2 guy. And I think he's shown some flashes. I think he's done some nice things, but then there's moments where balls are deflecting off his hands and he's not doing enough and he's not making the plays to sort of complement Jerry Jeudy. And we knew this was a potential outcome, right? We knew that there were still questions about whether or not he could be and fill this role in an effective way. And I really like Cedric Tillman. I think he's gone about this the right way. You know, we talked before the season started, right before it started, about the idea that, you know, he was grateful that the Browns didn't go out and try to add another number 2 wide receiver, that they sort of banked on, we believe in you, but that he has to go out and prove it now. And I think there's been some moments, yes, but that's sort of the same thing we've said in previous years with Cedric Tillman, right? That there's been moments, but it just hasn't been like enough yet. And I think the separation issues are the biggest thing. Like as we talk about this team not being able to separate or find ways to get open, I think, you know, it starts with, because Jerry knows how to get open. He finds places to. He knows some of the nuances of defenses where he can find a spot and find it, even if it's for a split second. Like he gets himself in position to be able to make plays. And I think that's some of the things that are lacking from the rest of this receiver group that's obviously inexperienced. But the Browns need Cedric Tillman to be able to produce more than he has to this point, even though he's got the 2 touchdowns. And even though he's been pretty heavily targeted by Joe Flacco, they just need more from him. And they need him to find ways to get open, to create space, and be able to make plays for this team, because they are relying on an unproven group as a whole at that position. And it isn't, and to be fair, like it's not just said, the receiver room in general, we know, has its shortcomings. Jamari Thrash has barely played this season because they're using Harold Fenton Jr. so much as a slot guy. And that's a group I'm not as worried about. Like the tight ends are phenomenal on this team. Harold Fenton's been awesome. And I think there's a little bit more room for David Njoku to get involved. You want to get him some of those plays where he can kind of like catch a pass with some space and then, be able to just run forward and use that momentum to his advantage. He's been brilliant at that in previous years, especially with Flacco, at sort of maximizing those plays where he just gets the ball and can run off and run guys over and make plays that way. So like, I think there's more potential to get those guys involved and do some things. But I also think with Cedric, it's just been, there's a little bit of something missing, that extra gear maybe from a number 2 wide receiver that the Browns need right now. And if he's going to cement himself as a guy that can be that role in the future, they need more from him. We know this offense has its deficiencies. That's no secret. The receiving room is one of the biggest. The offensive line is obviously, I think, running into some issues early going here in the season already. And those are things that we have to talk about as well as the season progresses, especially if they continue. But I just think that there's room for Cedric Tillman to do even more for this team and provide and be more really of a consistent threat and weapon for the offense. Because there's just something missing when it comes to that group, when it comes to this receiving core. Tillman he played the most snaps of any wide receiver against the Ravens on Sunday. He played 95% of the snaps. Jerry Jeudy played 88% of the snaps. And his impact was fairly minimal, all things considered, when he only catches 2 passes. Sorry, I was looking at I know it was 2 passes, but I need to get to the right box score here. He caught 2 passes for 22 yards and obviously the deflected touchdown. And if that pass gets intercepted, he has one catch. It's just been wildly disappointing so far. That I shouldn't say that because week 1 was solid aside from the deflected pass, right? The one that hit off his hands. Other than that, it was a solid game, and it felt like he was kind of on his way towards cementing himself in that role and having the impact that we expected. But if the Browns are going to beat some of these superior teams, they need a true number 2 wide receiver that teams are worried about. And I don't know that that's the case right now. So they just need a little bit more from him. Getting him open is going to be a key in this game and moving forward this season, allowing him to be able to, find space to operate and continuing to get him the ball, and making sure he's doing his job correctly to maximize that is key here. But I just think there's still another level that we need to see from Cedric Tillman to truly know if he can fill this number 2 wide receiver role for years to come, as the Browns, I think, are sort of hoping he can. Week 1 was good. Week 2 was a step back. I get it. You're playing a better team as the Ravens, but there's no rest for the weary here, right? This is the NFL. You get the Packers this week. They're a very good team with a very good defense. We got to see it more consistently from Cedric Tillman, which has been the question with him really since he got here and started having a more increased role with this team, and obviously dating back to last year especially. And we'll see if that's something that can sort of work itself out and if it gets better as time goes on, because otherwise the Browns are still going to have a need at that position, which is probably the case anyway. But you want to see Ced continue to grow and against even better teams, good teams, him still be an important factor in what the offense is able to do and accomplish. So we'll see if he can do that against the Packers this week. It's no tall task. And speaking of the Packers, how do I think Sunday is going to play out? I'll give you my prediction and all that coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's a local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving the community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. Like Mally's Chocolate, for example. Mally's is well known here in Northeast Ohio. I go there every single Easter and get my son his chocolate bunny for his Easter basket. And I can tell you that North Olmsted location in particular, they are run by Square. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. All right, so I've talked a lot this week, including with Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers, about what needs to happen for the Browns to come away with a victory in this game on Sunday. And I think the path to victory in this game is fairly small. I think they would have to really mess things up for the Packers, which could happen because, by the way, Tucker Kraft not practicing on Friday for the Green Bay Packers. And that's notable because that's an area that I think can be exploited by the Browns. They've struggled with tight ends over the years. And and Jordan Love loves to spread the football around. We've talked about that. But Tucker Kraft is a great tight end in this league. And so if he's not out there, I think that makes defending the Packers a little bit easier in the pass game. So maybe there's a world where they do keep it close, and this time the offense finally figures it out and comes together. I just don't know that I'm banking on that when you know Micah Parsons is bearing down on you every single play, and that dude's elite. So we'll see. But I think the path to victory for the Browns starts with what I said first segment. Get the ball first, or take the ball first if you win the toss, and go down the field and score a touchdown on the opening drive. If you do that, I think it sets the tone for everything else. The offense, the rest of the game, the defense in trying to defend a lead, which is something they've rarely had in games this year, rather than trying to just defend in a way where you're like, we got to keep a minute. A turnover would help, but if you don't get one, it puts the onus on the offense to protect the football a little bit better. We know that that's always going to be the case. And I think you have to run the football effectively. I've said it a bunch of times this week throughout each episode, like Quinshon Judkins being able to be that workhorse back and have an increased workload and do a little bit more and provide a spark because the run game gets going would work wonders for this offense. Everyone keeps wondering, well, hey, why haven't they taken the shots downfield? Because they're not open. These defenses don't respect the Browns in the run game, and so they just play two high safeties, keep everything underneath, and hope that they can stop the Browns that way, and it works. It's how it works every single time. So the Browns have to find a way to loosen up defenses a little bit more, create some of those opportunities to push the ball down the field, and if they do that, I think they can give themselves a shot in this game. But that said, man, the Packers are really good. Their defense is incredible. Their offense is really well balanced from a sense of like Jordan Love might not have like that elite target that he can go to, but he has a lot of guys that are really good, and he can, throw the ball to any of them and make plays happen and get the offense kind of going. Their run game has been a struggle. So maybe that's another way that the Browns, if they make the Packers one-dimensional, that might help your cause. That might make life a little bit easier in general for your offense and to not have to score a ton to win. And we saw last week, this Browns front seven can really do some damage against opponents in terms of stopping the run, preventing them from making that a factor offensively. They limited Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson to 36 yards in that game on Sunday. I mean, that's remarkable. For those two guys in particular to only have that many yards rushing is a pretty remarkable feat in general. So they got to be able to do that again, keep Josh Jacobs from having a major impact on the game, and make Jordan Love try to be the one to beat you. He can beat you. He's a good quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. And that's where I worry a little bit because this Browns secondary obviously has its issues. But if the defense can do what it's done these first two games and limit the damage, and the offense can actually finish some drives with points and protect the football, I think they'll obviously have a great shot in this game. They'll have a shot in any game. But it starts with getting that run game going on offense. I think scoring first would be massive, and those are the two things that I'm kind of looking at. Also, by the way, Dawand Jones, this is a reality check game for him. If he has any future at left tackle, if he has any future as a starter in this league, like what he does against Micah Parsons is going to be very noticeable and very important in the grand scheme of his future and where he's kind of at in general with this Browns team and this Browns offensive line. Like, this is a test for him, his biggest test yet as that left tackle, and how he plays is going to be pivotal. I'll be watching that throughout the game for sure. How he plays in general is going to, either assist or be a detriment to the run game. It's going to either assist or be a detriment to the passing game, because if Micah Parsons can just get loose and get after the quarterback and make, and really bother Joe Flacco, that's not a recipe to winning this game, especially if he has to draw back and throw the football 45 times, which is why the run game is so important for Cleveland this week, to get that thing going in gear and actually moving in a positive way, which is where Quinshon comes into play. But I expect a bigger workload from Quinshon. I'm willing to say he gets pretty much like what a full workload is going to look like for him this week. And you'll see the dynamic duo of him and Dylan Sampson sort of working in unison in this game. And I think the Browns have a chance here to keep it interesting per usual. I mean, at some point, I'm going to be right about predicting the Browns to score 20 points, right? Like, at some point, it has to happen. I don't know if it happens this week, but I'm going to say that the Packers win, and I'll say that the final score ends up being 27-18, I'll say. They keep it interesting. It's a fluky score, but it's always fluky. I every time I try to pick the actual football scores, like, 27-20 and whatever, and like I actually go with like how the maths in these games, it never works out for me. So I'm better off just going with a quirky score of 27-18. Packers win the game. Browns keep it within the 10 that I think some sports books have jumped to. I think it's been between like 8.5 to 10.5. I don't know. But it's a massive spread again. I'll give him some love in terms of not getting blown out by double digits, but I don't know that I trust this offense right now to score 20 points. And until I see it, I don't know if I believe it. So we'll say that the Packers get out of there with a win, pull away late, 27-18, a final score in Cleveland for the Packers and the Browns this weekend. I'd love to hear your score predictions at Spencito_ is where you can find me, or jump in the comments section, as always, with the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. If you like what you heard, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. For your second listen, you can get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you the shot of espresso to start your football day, and then Tony Wiggins brings you home with the barbershop with some of the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs and Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I'll talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.